This video is going to be the first installment of a multi-part series I'm going to be calling The Approach, which is going to be covering everything you need to know about how to approach women in a cold approach situation. And this particular video is going to be called The Open. This is everything you need to know about how to actually open up a conversation, as in start a conversation between you and a woman in a cold approach situation. What's your name, by the way?
Maria.
Maria. Jason. Nice to meet you. You have pretty eyes, Maria,
Thank
but they scare me. Go away. Miss,
you.
you have probably the prettiest resting bitch face I've ever seen.
Thank you so much.
What's your
Thank
name?
you. My name is.
I'm Jason. I go over concepts like the open, how to run an interaction, how to number close, how to set up a date over the phone, and how to run a date from the beginning to the end in my training program and course called The Interview. The link to that and an opportunity to work with me one-on-one will be in the description. Now, what exactly is the open? What exactly is an open? An open is basically the method that you go about using to create an opportunity to start a conversation with a woman. So it's all the things involved in what you say and what you do, and usually a combination of both those things, but especially what you say, that help you to actually get into a conversation with a woman. Because you have to think about it like this. Every woman that you see out there walking around is essentially in their own world, their own bubble. An opener is essentially like a needle. It's something you use to pop that bubble and give you an opportunity to bring her into your bubble. Does that make sense? That's really what an opener is. It's a very simple concept. Now, when you are opening a woman or opening a conversation with a woman, starting a conversation with a woman, you're really trying to achieve three major things, right? Every good opener, by definition, achieves three major goals at the same time, right? Not two out of the three, not only one out of the three, three out of three. And this is what they are. The first one is the common sense thing. Get the girl's attention. You must actually be able to acquire the woman's attention and keep it to some degree in order for the opener to be good. If the opener doesn't even do that on a basic level, it's not a good opener. The second thing is to lead the conversation. You see, the best openers out there, and the entire point of them really, is to not just get the woman's attention, but to put you in a position where you are already established as the leader of the conversation. You're not going into the conversation, opening up the conversation, and then having her take the conversation wherever she wants or in whatever direction she wants to take it to. A good opener establishes you automatically as the person that is leading the conversation, that is actually taking the conversation in the directions that you want. Which brings me to the third thing that all good openers achieve, which is making sure that the girl feels something, making sure that some kind of spark or tension is acquired, right? It might not necessarily always be emotional friction or something bad per se, but as long as there is a significant spike up in her emotions, then the opener has done its job. That is what an opener is really for ultimately. The getting attention part, pretty easy, right? Pretty easy, fairly easy to do. You can do everything from yelling to dancing to whatever. I'm not saying you necessarily do all those things because you obviously don't want to go too far to the other side where you risk being a dancing monkey, of course. But the point is, getting a woman's attention, getting people's attention in general, is fairly easy. And on top of that, once you're the one going out of your way to put in the effort to get her attention, then you're pretty much also going to automatically be seen as the leader of the conversation once it begins, once it actually properly starts. So that's also easy. The third thing, though, is where it gets tricky for a lot of people and for openers in general. It's the not just making her feel something, but making her feel something so that she can begin to become a willing participant to the conversation that you want to have with her. Because that's the real point, right? It's achieving some kind of emotional relevance or enough of an emotional relevance at the start of the conversation so that she can keep having the conversation with you. If you achieve the first two things, but you don't achieve that third thing, the conversation is not going anywhere. At the same time, if you think you can achieve that emotional relevance without first doing the basics, getting her attention, being established as the leader of the conversation, then there's no conversation there either, right? So all these three things happening at the same time are very important. Here's how to actually do them, right? Let's go into the nitty gritty of what they look like. Now, please note, there is one major thing that holds you back whenever you're trying to use an opener or trying to start a conversation with a woman to any degree, right? And that is the fact that you cannot telegraph interest way too soon. In fact, it's a fundamental law of the game. Now, let me explain what I mean by that, because this is very important to understand. This will make or break your opener, and this is very nuanced, so pay attention. Here's how it works. A woman cannot be told to any degree that you like her until and unless she likes you already. That's really the fundamental rule, right? Every time you try to tell a woman that you like her first, she automatically loses interest in you because that makes her doubt your value as a man, right? You see, in a woman's mind, she needs to consolidate on a man that she believes to be better than her, right? A higher psychological position, if you want to call it that. A man that she doesn't deserve. Well, what would be one of the major calling cards or characteristics of a man that she doesn't deserve? That man will be hard to bring into her life. That man will require some effort and work on her part to get him to buy into her. That is the experience she's looking for, right? So, a man that goes out of his way to just be like, I like you up front, clearly by his own actions, disqualifies himself as being the kind of guy that she needs to work to be deserving of. So you can't be the guy that's telling her through your words or your actions that you like her first. Not until she's receptive to you liking her. Now, pay attention to that too. This is very important. I'm not necessarily saying that she needs to tell you that she likes you first before you can tell her that you like her. That's not what's going on here. What I am saying is you have to make her ready for your telegraphed interest. You have to make sure that she actually likes you, even though she doesn't communicate it directly to you first, before you indicate interest in her. And so navigating a good opener, a good conversation starter, will help you to do that correctly. This is where we enter the kinds of openers they are, because the kind of opener that you use, depending on the situation you're in with a girl, and obviously the kind of girl you're dealing with, is what will determine when you can telegraph your interest and increase your chances of success with regards to the rest of that conversation. So there's two different kinds of openers. A direct opener and an indirect opener. That's it. In order to understand the difference between the two, you have to understand what they are individually. And ironically, they kind of are defined by their difference. So here it goes. A direct opener is an opener where you telegraph your interest to the girl immediately, as soon as possible. Like, you telegraph your interest to the girl within the opener. You're telling her to some degree that you like her. An example of that would be, you walk up to a girl and you say, hello, miss, I think you're very beautiful. I think you're the most gorgeous girl I've seen in my life. You've probably heard these openers before. You've seen them probably in movies, TV. You've probably heard your, drunk, creepy uncle say them at some point to a woman. Whatever. It's the most common kind of opener. In fact, the majority of openers that you've heard in your life, the majority of pickup lines that you've heard in your life are based on direct opens. And again, you can see how they are built. You can see the very design of them is to tell the girl from the jump, I like you. I find you interesting. I acknowledge your value to me. I like you, right? The second kind of opener is an indirect opener. An opener that gives you some kind of space or interval to show the girl your interest a little later in the conversation. So with the direct opener, your interest is telegraphed very directly. With the indirect opener, your interest is not as telegraphed or not as directly telegraphed. So an example of that would be one of my favorite lines that I talk about all the time, which is, you have the most beautiful resting bitch face I've ever seen. You have probably the prettiest resting bitch face I've ever seen.
Oh, thank you so much.
What's your
Thank
name?
you.
It's one of my favorite lines of all time. It's, ranked me in so many dividends. And it's a beautiful indirect opener. Why? Because of the structure of it. What am I saying to the girl? I'm telling her she has the most beautiful or the most positive of a negative trait, a resting bitch face, right? So she has the most beautiful, positive, resting bitch face I've ever seen. Negative, right? Another example would be like, I like your eyes. What was that one I used the other day? I like your eyes, but you need to look away from me. They scare me. I have pretty eyes, Maria, but they scare me. Go away. Another perfect example of an indirect opener. Why do these count as indirect openers? What makes them so indirect? Well, it's very simple. The truth is, they're also half direct openers. All these indirect openers also count as direct openers. The difference between them and a straight up direct opener is that there's a pullback on them. There's something within them, an element of them, that makes it so that the interest isn't completely 100% telegraphed. There's still something in these sentences that indicates to the girl, okay, this guy doesn't 100% like me. He is not 100% sold on me, right? Now, if you're still confused about openers and you want more examples of them, I have an entire instructional guide called the Opener's Guide, and I'm going to give it to you completely for free. It has about 40 plus examples of openers that I've personally created, used, tried, and tested, and have shown to yield actual tangible results. It is going to be completely for free to you today, and I'm going to keep the link to that in the description below. Now, if the idea of an opener is to not telegraph interest too soon, or to wait till you get some kind of indication that the girl likes you before you show her that you like her back through your words, then it only makes some kind of common sense to only ever use indirect openers. And you'd be right, honestly. I'm a huge fan of indirect openers. They're the best by far. And honestly, for the rest of the video, we're going to be talking a lot more about them than the direct openers. But I do want to let you know, though, before we go into that, direct openers aren't necessarily bad. They're just not the best all the time because of this one thing, and that's you can't read women's minds, especially when you first meet them, right? Pickup and game are just about the best skills there are on the planet for doing just that, or mimicking that, which is the predictor of female behavior and reading women's minds. But even with this amazing power, you can't for sure know when you walk up to a girl if she already likes you or not, right? Maybe the attraction is there from the jump, maybe it's not. Yeah, sure, you're a good looking guy, but what if you look just like her ex that traumatized her? Now you're not in the good basket, you're in the bad basket in her mind. And as a result, trying to skip that initial phase where you go from trying to identify if the interest is actually there to actually giving her interest, that becomes a little trickier. You see what I mean? So there's definitely a time and place for direct openers, but it's not all the time. With that said, though, they do work. If you can get it right, if you can maybe make some kind of educated guesses, and that will come with time and experience, or maybe you're just pattern recognizing, that also comes with time and experience, or you're just winging it, right? You're just playing the numbers game, seeing what works out there. The majority of the time you will not hit with your direct opener, but a few times you definitely will. You will run into women that like you from the jump, and as a result, because they already like you, you telling them from the jump that you like them back is a good thing. It's a wonderful thing. You'll have increased sexual tension and escalation. You'll ride off into the sunsets forever, and go and do whatever the fuck you need to do. However the fuck you want to lead that conversation, let it be, right? But for the majority of the time, and especially if you want to be dealing with high quality women, these are very attractive, highly beautiful women, you're probably going to be using an indirect opener. You kind of have to, especially with the beautiful ones. I cannot stress this enough. You got to understand, with beautiful women, in their entire life and experience, all they ever run into is guys that try to use the most direct openers that they can muster in the moment. Most guys are very nervous around beautiful women. They carry a lot of nervous, anxious energy. And so a lot of guys have this illusion of action that they have around them. This false sense of urgency to do something grandiose to get what they deem to be the baddest chicks. And so that usually leads them into doing just the most ridiculous, outlandishly out of this world direct openers, which is never a good idea. And so, what beautiful women usually are craving and starving for out of their men in the dating world and their dating experience is a man that is calm, cool, and collected enough to not blow his load and telegraph so much interest so soon. They're genuinely looking for a man that'll give them that interval, that space to actually chase for once. That is an experience beautiful women usually don't have. The experience of chasing a man of value that they want and they choose and they genuinely feel like they don't really deserve. That's a very uncommon experience for a beautiful woman to have, to run into a man that she feels like she's not good enough for, right? So with those women, you're definitely gonna want to pull out the indirect openers. Those are by far your best ones. And I only ever recommend two different types of indirect openers. There's different kinds of indirect openers out there, so many different kinds. But I only ever use two myself, and those are the only two you ever need to know, right? These are the only two types of indirect openers that you'll ever need to be using, okay? The first one is what we've kind of already touched on with the examples I gave previously, which is the push pulls. The push pulls. Probably the most simplistic, most easy to memorize formula for creating a conversation out of thin air. And that is a very simple thing to do. It's built on a very simple concept. Say something positive in the beginning about her, say something negative at the end. It's really that simple. That's it. Positive, negative. Good, bad. Comfort, value. You say something that sounds like a compliment in the beginning, or something that honestly is a genuine compliment in the beginning. And then you say something afterwards that pulls the compliment back or takes away the power of the compliment. So let's think of a regular compliment. You're beautiful. It's a good, regular, common enough place compliment. You're beautiful. All you have to do once you say that compliment is now say something that takes away from that initial compliment. You're beautiful. But, and then some negative thing. Something that is preferably not something that hits too close to home for her or too personal, right? Try to keep it super surface level, super playful. In fact, the more playful, the better. And we'll talk about why playfulness is very important throughout this entire process in the end. But something that she doesn't have to take extremely personal. So you're beautiful, but you give me the creeps. You're beautiful, but I don't know if we'll get along together. You're beautiful, but I don't know if I like that dress on you. Right? That is a perfect formula right there for understanding how push-pulls work. Now, why exactly do they work? Not just because they take away the power from the actual compliment you're giving, so you're not telegraphing interest too soon, but they also increase intrigue and tension in the conversation, which naturally increase her sense of urgency, curiosity, and emotional investment in the conversation that you're starting with her. Right? When you start a conversation out with a girl like that, automatically all of her senses are going towards you, negative and positive and otherwise, and that's a very good thing because that means now she is standing at attention, hanging off of every word you say, trying to figure out what exactly do you mean, right? Most beautiful women, especially, don't get talked to like that. Most men are way too scared to say something to offend a beautiful woman. So when you're the guy coming out there and being like, you know what? You must have the most beautiful resting bitch face I've ever seen. Almost every time, the reaction to that is always going to be like, wait a minute, what does that mean? Which automatically puts you in a conversation. Boom. Opener. Achieved. Conversation starter. Unlocked. Right? Now, one thing you need to know about push-pulls, and this is very important, is that there's a very subtle trick to the execution of push-pulls. And I call it the delay. The rhythmic pause. And it's very important. Watch this. Again, very simple formula. Say something positive, say something negative. What a lot of people don't understand is that between those two things, there should be a pause in the middle. A significant one. Because don't forget, the positive you're talking about here is a compliment to her. Right? It almost like feels in the moment like you're essentially putting yourself in the same box as every other guy that she's used to that'll just come up to her and give her a random compliment. And so that pause in the middle gives it the chance to marinate a little bit in her head and almost want to keep you in the regular guy basket. And then just when she's comfortable enough to think that you're just like every other vanilla nice guy that's going to give her a compliment out of nowhere for no reason without making her work for it, you flip the script and now you give her a negative. Something to let her know, oh, okay, this guy isn't sold on me yet. Just when I was thinking to get comfortable around this guy, now I know he's actually of higher value and I have to work for him. So just think about it like that.
That's pretty eyes, Maria. But they scare me. Go away.
So that's a very simple formula for opening indirectly. The next one, and I think is just as powerful in my opinion, and the one I would say I subscribe to the most these days, and honestly for the last couple of years or so, is the situational opener.
Hey, why don't you bring?
Because she's a foster, so I'm not really allowed to like let her play with other dogs.
Oh,
But I think she would be good. And
Now, to be completely honest, situational openers don't necessarily hit as hard as a regular push pull, but they do have a very significant power and a unique ability when it comes to starting conversations. And that is the ability to keep you in the pocket of happenstance. Essentially, get you to abide by the law of happenstance, which is a fundamental law of the game. And if you don't know what that law is, it's very simple. It's a law that states that whenever you talk to a girl, it should always feel, at least to her, that the conversation between you and her just happened. Everything in game, in fact, not just the start of it, the middle of it, the end of it, blah, blah. Whenever you talk to a girl, it should all feel like a very seamless, natural process. And situational openers help with that more than any other kind of opener on the planet because a situational opener is really just an opener that makes you take elements from around your surroundings, your immediate surroundings with the girl, and incorporate it into how you're starting the conversation with her, right? So, for instance, let's say you meet her at the grocery store. Instead of just go up to her and say something about her resting bitch face, you can look in her cart and pick out something she's picked out in the cart or something she's holding in her hand and use that as a point of reference to begin a conversation with her. Maybe even tease her about it. Oh, is that oat milk? Someone's lactose intolerant. Me too. High five. Now you're in a conversation with her, just like that. You teased, you enter the conversation, you're leading the conversation because you're the one dictating the topic, what to talk about. But on top of that, you couldn't have possibly planned to talk about oat milk before you walked up to her. That is something that genuinely looks like a happenstance. Oh, it just happened. I happened to walk into the same aisle as this beautiful woman. I happened to look in her cart while we were not too far away from each other. And I happened to point that out. And now we're in a conversation. You can do this with anything, right? You can be walking on the street with her and just happen to make a comment about her shoes. You can be in the same environment or vicinity as her and happen to make a comment about an article of clothing, something that's going on around you, maybe a band playing around you, maybe even a different person that's across the street that you want to make fun of with her. You poke her in the rib with your elbow and be like, hey, look at that guy, look at that guy. He's been watching me for like 5 minutes now. What do you think I should do about it? And now you're in a conversation with her. Situational openers are really that powerful, right? Now, remember what you're giving up for them, though. While they look more natural, while they feel more real, and they disguise the game a lot better for you, they're not as good at creating tension in the moment as push pulls. They're not as good at actually leading the conversation towards something more man to woman, where the focus becomes the fact that you and her are two sexual beings with the possibility of having sex later, right? You're gonna have to do a little more extra work for that. But in the push-pull situation, it's almost established automatically. If you're saying push-pulls, especially push-pulls that have something to do with something of her physical traits or something that she's doing or saying or wearing or anything like that, or some kind of physical feature she has, now you're a little closer to your actual objective in the conversation, which is creating a narrative of you and her in the romantic sense, right? So this is all very important. This is how situational openers work. This is how push pulls work, and it's best to keep all these things in mind. Now, when it comes to all these openers, no matter what kind you decide to use, no matter what ways you decide to use them, it doesn't really matter or doesn't really work as well as you think unless you do this one thing. And we've already mentioned it before, but it's playfulness. Playfulness is the real secret sauce behind all openers. Every conversation you have with a woman should be filled to the brim with playful, relaxed, calm energy. And this is very important for several reasons. The most important by far being the fact that when you are in a more relaxed state, she will follow you and be in a more relaxed state herself. And as a result, everything that you do around her becomes lighter. Everything that you do around her becomes a lot less consequential, especially towards the negative side of things, right? Think about it like sending a text. I don't care how serious the text you send is, but if you end the text with an LOL, it kind of kills all the momentum, all the negative emotion you've built up in that entire text beforehand, right? Not necessarily because the LOL somehow cancels everything you said before, but it at least puts some kind of an element of doubt in the mind of the person reading the text on the other side of the phone, because it's like, is he serious about this or not? Playfulness does that same thing in a real life conversation. When you're talking to a girl and you have an opener and you use that opener, and let's say you go a little too harsh on the opener to the point where the opener is tiptoeing the line of insult and it might be something that she might find offensive. Well, guess what? If you say all those things in a playful, calm, relaxed manner, then it's never going to be taken that seriously anyway. And that is a superpower. Playfulness, being able to actually say things in a way where it's whimsical and not to be taken seriously, is a cheat code. Honestly, you could get away with murder if you use playfulness correctly, right? So playfulness is a big deal for you, and you should learn to allow yourself to enter a playful state before you start talking to women. In fact, I would recommend doing certain kinds of warm-ups to help yourself get into a playful state. Become a little more childlike in your approach to women, because that is the kind of energy that will genuinely get them to not only see you as someone that they can feel comfortable with, play around with, but someone that can listen to you say anything in the world and just kind of let you get away with it without even thinking. All right. So that's pretty much it. That's all you need to know about openers. That's the first installment of the approach. On the next part, we're going to be talking extensively about the whole point of creating an opener, which is compliance. And if you want to just go ahead and skip past all this and get into even further detail about not just the approach, but everything that comes after the approach, texting, setting up dates, running dates, otherwise, I highly recommend my course, The Interview. I have an entire course where I talk about all these things extensively. Go into the link in my description to get it today. I'm currently running a promotion on it, so get it while you can. It's been Jason, Forever Scientist. With all this information, what you must.